social enterprise business models. We are having today Clémentine Blazy, and she will share her experience on the topic. I will be your host today. And before we get into the subject, I would like to make a short presentation of the rules of the house and also of the SIFTA program. So the rules of the house, the presentation, the webinar will last somewhere around 90 minutes of presentation, and we have a Q&A session at the end. We are recording the webinar so that if you want to go back to the topic, you have the opportunity to go back and to find the things you found most useful for you. Please ask a question during the presentation in the chat function, and we will pass the questions to Clémentine. And at the end, we will share the slides with you alongside the presentation. So SIFTA in a snapshot, just a few information. I know most of you are already familiar with this information, but it's never, let's say, it's a good opportunity to learn again. So SIFTA is part of the InvestEU initiative. As you can see, there are different streams of support, and SIFTA is under social investment and skills component, microfinance and social enterprise finance component. A SIFTA, the Social Inclusion Finance and Technical Assistant, has two components. One is focusing on advisory, capacity building, and market development. And the second one, it's focused on rating, assessment, and evaluation. The program is it's managed by EIB, and it's a continuation of a previous program and an enhancement of a previous program named EASY, Technical Assistance. In terms of eligibility, the SIFTA program can be addresses beneficiaries in EU 27 countries. It was initially planned up until December 2024, but we will most likely have a continuation in 2025. Who are the beneficiaries? Microfinance providers such as banks or non-bank microfinance institutions, and social enterprises such as investment funds, impact investors, incubators, accelerators, and so on. And basically, it's support for institutions that want to widen their scope, and for institutions that want to have additional services with their financial support for social enterprise. Who are the implementing partners? The consortium is led by Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, and the consortium partners are Microfinance Center, based in Poland, European Microfinance Network, based in Belgium. These institutions are focusing on the capacity building component, and MFR, based in Italy, it addresses the evaluation and rating services. If you want more information, you can go to EIB site. Also, you can send application on via email, and you would be asked to send a request for services. And if you, from there on, you are entering the official process of accessing the services. If you want more information, you can contact us via sifta.support@fs.de and at sifta-support@mfr-rating.com. And that being said, Clémentine, thank you for being here today. I will stop sharing, and I will let you start the presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you? I don't know if I'm able to share actually.
Yeah, it should be there, but let's see.
Yes. Now.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go. So you should be see full screen now. Yeah?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here with you for this session on social enterprises business models. So the idea was just to take stocks 10 years or maybe almost 15 years after the launch of the Social Business Initiative on social enterprises in Europe. They have been, over the last decade, developing and adapting also to cope with new and more acute social challenges, which has led also to many changes in the way they start and scale up and also impacted their business model. So that's the idea of this session. And just a very quick word about the European Center for Social Finance, with whom I joined forces 4 years ago now. So we're a competence center at the Munich Business School. And we develop applied research in the field of social entrepreneurship and social finance. And we try and combine, or we do combine academic background and also a good understanding of the practice, of the practical aspects of those fields. And as for me, I've been involved in social finance, impact finance over the last 15, not to say 20 years now. First in France, mostly working with France Active, which is a pioneer social investment actor in this country. They work in close partnership with the whole ecosystem, from the social finance provider to the non-financial support organization for social businesses and social enterprises. And they enroll solidarity finance programs and products. And so I was there heading the tailored financing and social investment activity. And also now I'm a regular contributor to several social finance providers, either in a very hands-on way, as an extension of their investment team, so to say, or as a committee or board member. So that would be for the agenda for this afternoon. So we have 90 minutes to explore this topic of business models of social enterprises. First, Yana, you mentioned the Q&A session at the end, but you're also very welcome, as you said, to ask questions on the way. So please don't hesitate, and maybe I will reach out to you also to spark exchange if possible at some point. In any case, so business models, so this is the way you generate economic value beyond your costs, and in order to create value and to generate a return for your equity holders. So that would be the basic definition of a business model. So what are we going to look into during the session? First, just asking the question, so social enterprises, are they so special? So what would be the pillars that are sustaining them? So really try to ask ourselves whether they have a different typical business models than classic mainstream corporate or enterprises. We will then try and assess the strength and the weaknesses of those models, looking very concretely at their P&L and their balance sheets. And then we then look at the more recent opportunities and challenges for social enterprises business model, from the growing recognition to the new transitions and the new challenges of all times, digital and green transition in Europe. And so, because social enterprise, they are at the same time spearheading this transition for some of them, but they are also weathering those transitions. And we will end up also touching upon this cultural shift also in the approach to social innovation design for more inclusive social enterprises. So without further ado, let's start. So first, what would be the key features of social enterprises, and what would be the impact on their business model? Alors, just a few definitions that you should know this, but just in case, just a very brief recap. So what are these social enterprises? They are combining societal goals with an entrepreneurial spirit. And so the definition that comes in this handbook of social enterprise law is that they perform important social and economic functions by helping the state to provide general interest services and to satisfy needs that are unmet by the state and traditional for-profit producers. So really this striving for general interest and satisfying unmet needs of the community is strongly embedded in their model. And how they do, it's not only the what, it's also the how that define the social enterprise, and that they are really managed in this open and responsible manner and involve employees, consumers, stakeholders affected by commercial activities. And this comes from the definition given by the Social Business Initiative, which is like kind of a seminal definition of what social enterprises are at European level at the very least. And so these enterprises, they are also not only at European level, but at a global level, they have common features. So these features, I just took them from a review of social enterprises that was published in 2023 and compared the social enterprises under 20 different jurisdictions. And so this very thorough analysis and comparative review just highlights three very important common features, which are the purpose requirement, the fact that the first purpose of these enterprises are to deliver positive social impact. And so depending on your geography, it will be focused on a specific industry or not, or it will have a focus on very specific given social purpose or a more broader set of social purposes. So purpose requirement first, then governance mandates, the fact that there is participation of the stakeholders in the governance in one way or another, but it's really touched upon in the statutes of the enterprise. And then there are also these transparency obligations, which are more or less also enforced by rules, but I mean, they are somewhere around the way they are defined. And labels are also another topic that is important because it might be a way to give access to more resources and more recognition that the social enterprise need to thrive. So that would be the more global definition, so to say. And at European level, we do have a common ground. So we started with the Social Business Initiative, although there were previous initiatives at European level, but really this one was particularly ambitious and in its original definition in all the programs that it led to. So in this definition, in little a, you really see the social objective prevalence over profit. So really the fact that social ambition is enshrined in the legal documentation of the enterprise, and this is really the purpose of it. Then you have the element of the profit distribution that is ruled also and supposed to fuel and foster the social mission. So the object, the profit distribution, and then the way it is managed in a participative way, which has concrete also implication on the development of the project and also on the business plan. And so this definition you will find in all the ESF plus implementation regulation, etc. So it's like a really fundamental definition, so to say, of key features of what social enterprises are. And just, I thought it would be important also to mention this. So there is this emerging notion of what could be a neighbor organization. So sorry, because I'm not an artist, so it's really, the sketch is not that nice. But anyway, the idea was to picture here, so the gray bubble, which is the whole social and solidarity economy, the green part circle within social and solidarity economy, regardless of really, there is no scale respect also in this drawing, but it was just to visualize. So the green bubble would be more social enterprises because they have, on top of all classical features of social economy, the social purpose really at the heart of their business model. And then the purple circle that are uncertain in terms of size as well would be impact-driven enterprises. So they recently emerged in parallel with also the growth of the impact investment resources and impact investing market, so to say. And so it's a little unclear as to the overlap between impact-driven enterprises and social enterprises. Nevertheless, they are very close neighbors. So I thought it was important to just mention them. And actually, oh, there is animation. I forgot this. And actually, those impact-driven enterprises, they have no legal definition yet, so to say, but you can find a definition in the European Fund for Strategic Investment regulation. So I put the link to an old one, but so you have this definition parallel of social enterprises and impact-driven enterprises. So here I just put one illustration in the target group, where you see that so for social enterprises, they are created to generate social returns first and foremost, which doesn't mean that they do not generate financial return, but it's just a prevalence. And then impact-driven enterprises, so this FC regulation, they offer solution to one or more societal issue, entrepreneurial solution, and aim to generate social benefits alongside a financial return, which comments a little bit, for instance, might have an impact on the way you distribute your profit, for instance. Well, we talk about addressing, of course, a societal issue. So this would be typical societal and environmental issue, of course. Social enterprise will try to tackle. So, of course, you know this by heart. Those are the SDGs. So the idea is to make sure that we tackle today's generations' need without jeopardizing future generations' ability to address theirs. There was this framework for SDG-aligned finance that was launched in end 2020, based on the evaluation of the last financing gap to reach the SDGs, which is like a staggering $4.2 trillion yearly. Just talking about developing countries. As far as Europe is concerned, I couldn't find any sizing in terms of gap. But definitely you can see on the right-hand side of this slide the progress of European Union towards SDGs over the past years. So this dates back in 2023. So as you can see, there are three dots that are quite advanced. I mean, or making nice progress. Among them, no poverty, and also gender equality. But then there is a big crowd in between, which might be lagging behind by the time we reach 2030, which is nice because now there is also a new roadmap being sketched out and also a new financial scheme or let's say framework for SDGs and the way finance could contribute. Voilà. Alors, so if we look at just more general, interesting to notice the European social enterprise landscape. So this European Social Enterprise Monitor you might have heard about. It's an initiative that has 6 years old. Every other year they publish this monitor, which is a Europe-wide survey among self-declared, self-identified social enterprises over 21 countries. And so last time they received 5,000 surveys, and then eventually 2,000 that were really able to be analyzed. And so what comes out is that most of them are classified, of course, as SMEs. So you won't find really biggest than SMEs social enterprises, and they are particularly represented in health and social work activities and also in education. So it's 45% of the economic sectors that are represented here, women-led as a majority, and almost half of them are targeting 3 main SDGs. So the decent growth, health, and reduced inequality, which doesn't mean that they don't touch upon other, for instance, no poverty thing, but these would be the 3 main topics that they would try and tackle. And in terms of beneficiaries or customers, because it can be both, it can be a synthesis or just separate stakeholders. Young individuals account for a third of the beneficiaries of social enterprises. And so women and individuals with mental illnesses would account for the rest of the main population that social enterprises target. And yeah, what stands out, of course, but we will see this a little bit later on in details, is that they are hindered in the development by financial barriers, lack of access to market, and lack of visibility. So this was just a brief snapshot of social enterprises before we move on to the building blocks of their models. Any questions so far? No.
We're good.
So what would be the building blocks of social enterprise business model? So first, just a small, you're probably quite familiar with this visualization. So this is the business model canvas. So as we said, the business model is this description of your activity that will explain the way you generate economic value beyond your costs, and you create value, and you add value added, and you create a return for your equity holder. And so this all this results from a series of choices in the way you operate, in the way you target your customers, etc., etc. So this illustration is really a way of visualizing the key element of your business model. So key dimension being at the central part of this business model canvas, your value proposition. So what are your products or your services? So which feature do they meet your customer needs? And why will customer choose your product or your service over competition? What type of customers problems do you solve? So that will be the central value proposition. So what you do, what are you here for? And on the right-hand side, you have everything that is linked to your outreach distribution. So customer relationship, the channels, so the way you will distribute your product or your service. So how do you find your customer? How will your product or service reach them? How will your customer buy your product or your services? What type of physical channel or digital channel can your product or your service be accessed through, etc. So that would be the channel part. The customer relationship is how best you attract your customer, how you look after them, how you really take care of this relationship so that it grows and that you increase your outreach. And the customer segments, of course, is the very precise and detailed knowledge that you have from all the customers you are trying to reach out to and to sell your product and or service to. And so on the left-hand side, so right is really outreach and distribution, and left-hand side would be more how you capture value alongside your production or delivery process, and what are the key needed resources for this. So your key activities, the resources that you need, all types of resources, human resources, of course, all the investments, digital resources, your key partners with whom you are going to deliver all your products and services, and the cost structure. So you see the below part of the visual is on the left-hand side, the cost structure, everything you need internally or with outsourced activity to generate your product or to deliver your service. And the revenue streams on the right-hand side would be the top lines of your P&L, just to in a nutshell. Voilà. Any question on this? I think you're quite familiar with this. So that would be classical business model. And if we just try and compare on the left-hand side a classic business model and on the right-hand side a social enterprise business model. So nothing very new. So the mainstream enterprise, it will be more dominated by, so the idea of, so you have three squares. So the value proposition that we saw, like the central part of your business model canvas, so what you offer to the customer, and then your operating model and your profit model. And the arrows converge towards the profit model, and the idea is to say that this model is strives for financial value creation and shareholder profit maximization, which is logical, and it's just there's no judgment at all. It's just the owners of the enterprise, and the social business model or the social enterprise business model will embark this top square, which is your theory of change. So really your social purpose for a given beneficiary. So the theory of change, it's so you touched upon this in the impact measurement sessions or anything linked around impact measurement. So it's really the idea framework to detail the causal links between what you do and the social impact that you generate. So, and this comes on top of the three other squares, and it's in a way creation of value outside of the enterprise, right? So it's more also for the general interest, for the community. And it's just the value doesn't stay within the loop of the enterprise towards equity shareholders. So that will be the main differentiation in terms of business model. Maybe we will take a look at how it also can develop into another type of business model canvas. So that would be the social business model canvas, which you probably already came across. So this was done by social business innovation lab, or I will put this. Yes, it's here. So it's social innovation lab. So really develop this model, and the idea is to see. So you have your value proposition. Every brick of this business model canvas will address two types of stakeholders. So your beneficiaries, your customers, three types, and your funding stakeholders, because there might be two or there might be one, but there might be three different stakeholders, right? So in the value proposition, you define what would be the proposition for these three different stakeholders. And then you will decline each of these blocks of the business model canvas while distinguishing beneficiaries, customers, and funding stakeholders. It might be that beneficiaries and customers are the same, but just to say that it might also be two different types of population. And then we will come also to illustration and examples. Yeah, we will come to illustration later on, so that might shed light on this. different ways to cluster social business models. So this looks a little bit theoretical, but I thought it was interesting also to look at how social enterprises are defined also in academic literature. So this comes from a study done by the EMES network. So it's a network of researchers on social economy. This is an international comparative social enterprise models research project. And this was published 2023, but the model that you see here, it's dated back already 2017. So it try and establish a first classification of the main groups of social enterprises in Europe. And so the idea is that if you try to project the overall object enterprise, not necessarily social enterprise, on a map, that would be a triangle, and the triangle will have three corners representing the principle of interest that you found in economy in general. So you have general interest, capital interest, which will be benefiting capital owners, and mutual interest. Mutual interest being, for instance, co-ops or mutual, which are developing service for their own members, right? So if you try to project enterprise around this kind of map, depending on the choices of the interests that are served as decided by the governance, you will find this type of projection. So, as I said, all traditional cooperative association pursuing interest of their members will be at the mutual interest angle, the bottom left angle. On the right-hand side, bottom, you would find capital interest, and on the top, the general interest. And so, for instance, on the right-hand side, you see capital interest. If you move a little bit upwards, you see CSR, corporate social responsibility. And the further up you move towards general interest, you cross this dotted line, right? And you ended up as social enterprise, social business, for instance. So that will be the idea, as well as from the mutual interest angle. If you move upward towards general interest, you find the SC in gray, and this is social cooperative. Voilà, and so this is how the researcher came up with this kind of classification with the social cooperative, that is a cooperative aiming at specific social mission, a social business, which is more rooted in business model driven by shareholders, but mixed with the social entrepreneur, with the social mission, and better integrate economic and social purposes. And then you get the entrepreneurial nonprofit, which comes from, so GI ASOC means General Interest Association. So those general interest association that would be developing more commercial activities or hybrid activities would be those entrepreneurial nonprofit. And you also have this public social enterprise, which would be spin-off from the public sector. And so they are all between those two dotted lines because they rely on hybrid resources to roll out their activity. When you are on the bottom, you really rely dominantly on market income. And when you just go further up the top of the triangle towards general interest and state, of course, it's more non-market dominant resources, so public grants, but also donation subsidies. Voilà. So I found this interesting just to take a look at how you can also try and represent the landscape of enterprises and where do social enterprises fit into what it says about their business model.
We have a question from Rafael. He's asking what PSAE means. Public sector enterprises, right?
Exactly. Public sector social enterprises. So they would be typically launched by local public bodies sometimes in partnership with the nonprofits already existing, with the idea of providing services which would be mostly outsourced. So typically you would find there the care services that are managed by nonprofit organization. Does it answer the question?
Raphael, was the answer okay for you?
Yes. Okay. It's clear. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's the way, but I will go fast because I see the clock is ticking. So so that will be how they try and operationalize the definition and how it falls into different type of social missions between entrepreneurial, nonprofit, public sector, social enterprises, and social cooperative and social business. And so you see different models, and depending on where you come from on this triangle of interest. If we look at the investors approach, which will be another way of approaching social enterprise business models. So investors approach just falls into this typical risk return framework. And the idea is that the higher the risk, the higher the expected return. It's all described in this capital asset pricing model, which is based on a relationship that suggests that the expected return on assets are directly proportional to the level of risk of this asset. So this is an essential consideration for all investors and financial managers when they are taking their investment decision. It's also true on a portfolio level, giving your overall level of risk and level of return. You will adjust future investment decision based on what you are targeting for your portfolio. Alors, the question is, where would a social enterprise be placed on this risk return framework? Well, two ways to look at it. There are first. So this, what is this visual first? Sorry, you have the line, so that we saw just previously. This represents the risk return trade-off, or the expected financial return an investor would demand for a given level of risk. Okay, and so investment targets, they would typically evolve on this line, right, where the blue bubble is. And the question is, where would a blue bubble that would be a social enterprise stand? So is it below the line or above the line? And so, so the first school of thought would say that impact will justify a lower return. So typically for a given level of risk, just the blue bubble will drop, and this is fine because as an impact investor or social finance provider, you have your social and environmental outcome that you are striving for as well, and so all your investment target, they will fall into the like, let's say, the triangle below. Bon. And then the second school of thought will be that either impact orientation increases return, so which you will just move the bubble upwards, or it reduces risk. That is kind of well documented, I must say. The fact that also social enterprises are more resilient, given all the stakeholders community that they are revolving around them. Voilà. So that would be the two different approach to social enterprises model, and I must say that the two school of thoughts are coexisting, and the beauty of it is that there are now a diversity of investors that are just distributed between the two school of thoughts, meaning that there should be enough resources for social enterprise, but maybe I'm a bit optimistic on this 29th of November. Voilà, so this will illustrate the first school of thought, so the trade-off model, that each time you increase your financial return, you will decrease your social impact. So, for example, as a fair trade company, if you say, bon, I will increase my margin, so I will need to lower purchasing price. Okay, but then it will reduce the income of the local community, so the impact will be a little lower. For microfinance companies, if you have a higher interest rate, of course you improve your margin as well, but again, it will reduce the capital available for your clients. For retirement homes, every time you improve also your services, you have additional costs, and so either you raise the cost and you're less affordable, or and then the impact is lower, or you just reduce your financial return. So again, a trade-off, etc. Okay, of course, this does not completely apply when we speak of scaling up. If you are really experiencing a huge leap in growth, there are economies of scales, etc., that allows you to gain both at some point once you reach a step in your development, right? And that will be the illustration of the lockstep model. The lockstep model being that your financial returns grows hand in hand with your impact, right? Typically, circular economy, voilà. If you improve your process and you better separate materials, then you might better sell and also increase your revenue. So you will improve your environmental footprint and also increase your revenue at the same time. I must say that in this lockstep model, there are not so many social enterprises that fall into. So it's you cannot, or I haven't seen so far a lot of lockstep model social enterprises that would address at least all the most challenging social issues of our time. But there are some, and actually impact investors such as Maze, they are following they are targeting those type of enterprises. So I invite you to look at their portfolio that will give you a sense of what type of enterprises are falling into this social business, this type of social business model, social enterprise business model, sorry. If we try to, are there questions so far, or do I move on?
There are no other questions in the chat, but if you have any other question,
can you go back, Clementine? Can you go to the previous? Yes, I think this lockstep model needs to be better understood. It's very critical, I think, that higher social impact leads to higher financial returns. I think most people will find it very
appealing, compelling,
or difficult to prove, or difficult to demonstrate, I would say.
Yeah, that's why again I would invite you to really look into what social was impact investors really targeting this type of model offer in terms of or having in their portfolio, because that gives a hint. They are very often would be systematically so this is my own impression, right? There is no literature that I'm quoting or whatsoever, but from what I came across, it's more tech-based, definitely.
Okay.
Because you need to be extremely fast scalable. Voilà. Well, and then yeah.
Okay.
First of all, it would be tech-based, and you would find more of these lockstep model in the region of more environmental outcome than social outcome. But it's in general, right? Je sais pas.
On the following slide, you have something about Impact Europe.
Yes, so that's the definition that they are. Yes.
I think this needs to be read carefully. I understand that in some areas where venture capital approach is used,
Oui.
well, let's say on social businesses, the venture capital approach is used. That may be the case. I know the people from Maze because they are from here, you know. I know the founders and the managers of Maze quite well, and I know they are focused very much on high scalable projects, and that's typical, I think, the venture capital approach, where venture business angels on mainstream businesses invest on projects they find then have very fast growth. So economies of scale, like you mentioned, can be reached very easier than in other cases.
Definitely.
So the margins, the operating costs can be cheaper, quite cheaper, and then the expectations about return could be quite high. I will go once we receive this your presentation. I will go through this text of Impact Europe to make sure I got it right. So I make sure I understand it correctly. Because on my discussions, both with potential investors and potential investees, this trade-off of risk return equation regarding how social impact enters in the equation is always critical, very critical.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think it's that simple to say it's one way or the other, you know?
No, and again, alors, en fait, I mentioned two schools of thoughts, but if you may have noticed that in the second one, there is this assumption that is higher financial return, higher impact go hand in hand. And the other one that would be, it's not exactly this, it would be either, it would be rather, that for a given return, the risk for a social enterprise investment is lower. So you're not on the same risk return line than the other enterprises.
I understand that may be the case on environment businesses where, you know, the risk of natural disasters, of forest fires, you know, where these what they call drastic climate events can really change completely the scenario. You know, imagine. I'm sure you have seen what has happened last month, 1 month ago in Valencia, in the coast of Spain. No, that various unexpected natural or I could not say natural, I don't know, you know, extreme events occur in Valencia. 40 municipalities are very hard hit, no? And of course, that has changed completely the whole everything, you know, health services, education, hospitals, current businesses, everything is under disruption. So where is the risk return line now anymore? Nobody knows, you know. How long it will take to rebuild or to go back to a previous risk return line that everybody could design, could expect, you know, because something from the outside of the model came out
This is
and destroyed completely the assumptions.
The type of event that would completely put the
change
model upside down, definitely. Yeah.
Okay,
no, but what I meant is that it's not necessarily this lockstep model. It can be just the fact that as a social enterprise, as an organization, as an object of an investment object, it might be that the appraisal of the risk of an investment in such an organization is not completely right, and it's less risky than another comparable organization that would not have this social mission if you take on a given sector. But again, these are assumptions. Voilà. So that was just to share like the investors' approach to business model of a social enterprise after this more academic approach. And then, but we will keep on inquiring this the type of impact that all these features have on the business model. So if we look at the revenue structure, question to you would be, if we look at the revenue structure of a social enterprise, how does social impact ambition influence the revenue structure of a given social enterprises? Does it influence in the sense that they will have additional revenue, a more diverse type of revenue streams, or rather reduced revenue? Well, I don't know. Let's see. If we take examples, so I have 3 illustrations for you. So you see Synergie Family, Basse Commune, Lemon Tree. Those are 3 French social enterprises, because maybe you heard from the accent I'm French. So Synergie Family, it's a non-profit actually. And so they developed an ecosystem of educational activities for children, young people, and families that are really focused on sport. And the idea is to promote personal fulfillment, equal opportunity. So they have a very empowering approach. They have very innovative educational project that they develop with different partners on a few territories. They are based in Marseille, but they are active in a few regions now in France. And they grew very fast. They have more than 600 employees. And they touch a few 30,000, I think, children every year. So it's quite a very a big impact, at least in numbers. So they grew very fast. They grew very fast on public funding, really project-based, really answering calls after calls. And so voilà. So that was this development model that has also its limits, also in terms of administrative burden, dependency, etc. And in order also for them to try to diversify their funding model and to capitalize on their know-how, they also created a for-profit subsidiary, which is a training company developing training for educators and all the staff that would be employed not only by them but also by other partners. And this way they have commercial revenues and they have also public revenues, and they still rely on donations. So what we could see is that in these additional revenues, they have public funding and public support that is very strong, but there is also a very big willingness to pay of their client base, namely the collectivity, the local public region. So that would be for Synergie. And Basse Commune, it's a real estate cooperative, and they combat urban devitalization, and they combat speculation. And the way they do this is that they purchase ground floor spaces for socially beneficial uses. So they acquire these ground floor places at a price that is up to 50% lower than market value, and they offer this space to occupants at an affordable rate. So could we say that it gives them access to additional revenue? Well, it would be maybe the other way around. It would maybe talk about the cost structure, which we'll touch upon later. But it was just to give you an idea of who Basse Commune is. And then the third example is Lemon Tree. So it's a social enterprise which is based in Île-de-France, and they now have almost 90 employees. A third of them are on work integration process, and so they are providing solutions to enterprise to reduce the waste, and so they are collecting waste from the businesses, and they are also promoting machines that are collecting and then promoting reuse of bottles and other packages. And so they are quite successful in what they do, but clearly one of their strengths is this higher willingness to pay from their client base because of this very strong social and environmental DNA that give them also kind of an advantage over other typical waste management companies. And they also, of course, benefit from public funding for this work integration they provide. But on the other hand, we saw in terms of revenue structure, there are reduced revenue in a way because, for instance, Basque Commune, we saw that they were acquiring those premises at a very discount price. But the idea is, of course, to propose these to their tenants at a very lower than market price. So hence reduced revenue. They also have, for instance, in terms of barriers, might have smaller client segments. Typically, if we take Synergie, en tout cas, in their first phase of development, they were really addressing very, very small segment of paying stakeholders, so namely a public authority. And there are also not restriction imposed by public funders, but actually more the fact that you cannot combine, there are different streams of public revenue that you cannot combine as well. So it's not, this comes also with constraints. If we look at the cost structure, maybe very briefly. So again, same question to you. How does this social impact ambition influence your cost structure as a social enterprise? Does it end up in lower costs or in higher costs? What a suspense. Alors, buying resources at below market prices. So typically that was the example of Basque Commune. So resources being their assets now, of course, like the premises that they are buying out. So that would be one. You can also have a reduced selling, general and administrative expenses. For instance, as a non-profit, when you mobilize also the work of volunteers, or you also kind of benefit from sponsoring and on other, but I mean concessional prices for partners that also comes into play. And you might also have fiscal benefits. So depending on where you are based in, typically the fact that you employ people with barriers to work gives you access to fiscal benefits. But it comes also at a price, so to say. Those fiscal benefits, for instance, or possibly the subsidies that you might become as a work integration social enterprise. Of course, goes along with increased support for the workforce in terms of coaching, training, etc. Also, a very strong obligation, of course, of impact measurement and impact reporting for all your stakeholders. And this is something that is clearly on the rise in terms of demands from partners. And that would be it. Maybe there are other things that you want to add on, or maybe I will just move on. Yeah, so that would be illustration also of things that are not completely, that are not, comment dire, that are not necessarily appearing on balance sheets, but they are like possibly underestimated assets or underestimated goodwill, so to say. The fact that as a social enterprise, you might get access to better, although scarcer, but better financing condition, impact-linked interests, or a longer grace period, things like this. You might benefit from like we mentioned, a loyal customer base, voilà, long-term financial commitments also from your partners, or you might get access to premises, for instance, at lower prices, etc. So these are not completely valued, but definitely they are part of the value of your social enterprises and of the pillars that you can rely on to grow. What has changed over the last 10 years when we talk about business model? Just wanted to look at operations and financing structure. So
before we go further, can we, Rafael wants to ask.
Sorry, I did not see your.
No, I know. Rafael,
can you go back to the previous slide as well?
Yes.
Before. Right. Balance sheet and costs. One thing that has been discussed is when we talk about, how can social enterprises operate on a normal market conditions if they receive or take advantage of special arrangements that can involve a lot of things. Mostly is more on, as you have said, reduced costs, meaning
Right.
pro bono services, okay? Pro bono, like financial services, legal services, marketing service. You can have a lot of services that some companies or professionals would be willing or prepared to provide on a pro bono basis. Okay. Another thing is typically, as you mentioned here, to use premises, free premises. It is very typical here that some municipalities can allow non-profit entities or social enterprise to use facilities that are at no cost. According to your experience, how should we consider these situations on a budgetary study or budgetary projection? I have been defending that we should put these inputs, these services or what kind of resources we are using on our budget at under normal price conditions. Otherwise, we will give our stakeholders a wrong picture was what is really necessary to implement a specific project or specific social business, because if we present these kind of inputs, under these special arrangements, nobody will know what would be the real cost if we had to pay them at normal price or market conditions. What is your experience on these matters?
Yeah, I mean, it's I would go for you have your best case scenario and your worst scenario. Usually, I'm a proponent of the worst case scenario, so I would say I would more go to a more reliable picture that is really full cost kind of thing. However, it really depends on how much these reduced costs or reduced resources weigh in your cost structure, right? Typically, if we speak of a development model where you get typically base commune. So it's not in their P&L because we're talking about acquisition of premises, but the fact that they buy these premises at a very discounted rate, it's part of their business model. So I mean, it won't work in any case if they don't have access to this type of opportunities and they secure this because they are offering also the public authority a way to revitalize one area. I see what I mean. So it's a balance. If we talk about reduce general expenses the way you mentioned, so like a pro bono support in low expertise, etc. Yes, I would not, at least in budgeting over like a 3-year period, etc. I would go for a more market-related type of cost structure on these recurring costs, because eventually eventually this support is not completely like there forever also.
Yes.
So you have to prepare for the worst, kind of.
That was happened on an NGO I was connected with that for maybe more than 10 years could use facilities for the offices for everybody at zero cost. And suddenly that entity, which as a fact was the Lisbon water supply company, decided, okay, our partnership is is coming to an end, so you have to move away. And so suddenly everybody was not used to pay electricity, to pay water bills, to pay a rent, and suddenly you have to think, oh, next year or in 2 years' time we have to include these costs on our budget. That's quite a big difference,
Yeah, definitely. So again, and it comes back to the first point I was making, that was, it really depends on how much it weighs also on your cost structure and how much essential it is. So definitely I would not rely on this on a recurring basis, or at least I would see to it that I prepare for the worst. And so that's why also the stakeholder engagement is that important, huh? As long as your stakeholders are involved and they are kind of embedded in the project and in the governance, then those type of support vanishing away are less about to happen, or at least they would go progressively. So this talks about a partnership.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the first one very important thing that has changed over the last 10 years when it comes to social enterprises and their business model. I mean, there are many things that change, and I mean, the world has completely undergone a kind of a revolution, all the more also than around the last 4 years. But anyway, impact measurement has become really central as a demand from funders, from investors, from customers. I mean, from every part of your different inflows and outflows as an enterprise. Impact measurement, all the more so that you say that impact is your main purpose, has become really essential. So social enterprises, and if I take again the example of work integration social enterprises, they have been used, of course, to report on the social output to the public authority that are partly financing their operation, but really going through a thorough impact measurement framework and defining KPIs and really reporting on also a framework that goes broader, that goes beyond social mission, that also encompass the environmental dimension. That is also important. This is something that has been quite on the rise, and that of course impacts you, because it speaks of the tools that you are having to capture the data, on the people that are managing this data, and on how you report. So clearly an impact on the cost structure. So the regulation, SFDR, of course, has a strong impact. Of course, social enterprises, there are little, in the sense of, like we said it, they were 94% SMEs, and they are below the threshold of SFDR at the moment. But as they are part of the value chain, in any case, their customers, if they work with they are in B2C model, for instance, would be definitely demanding elements on this. So I should have said impact measurement and ESG measurement imperatives, actually, when I just look at the slide again. So as well for market access for social enterprises has, generally speaking, at European level improved over the last 10-15 years. Social enterprises, they have more systematically access to public contract, or can contract with bigger corporates. But again, it comes with impact measurement, impact accountability, impact demands. Same with public funding practice, and we saw that there is an outcome-based contract that are really on the rise in terms of business funding practice, and also this new crowd of funders. So philanthropic funders are really increasing in terms of demand on your impact, your theory of change, and your KPIs, etc., and impact investment definitely as well. So this has become an imperative, and it's of course impacts your cost structure, because this is something that you need to take into account, and it takes also time. And bon, digitalization is a blessing and it's a curse at the same time, but definitely that's something that has taken a lot of bandwidth within social enterprises, and it's a huge leverage, of course, of efficiency and also to grow their impact. So Lemon Tree would be a good example of a real digitalization process that really helps improving the value proposition, also in terms of impact measurement. So they developed a proprietary digital tool that really follows the whole circuit of waste from collection to recycling or landfill or reuse, and they can feed their customers with this information on a very frequent basis. So which is good, because it all support their customers also reporting on their environmental footprint, etc. And they did this also in partnership with different subcontractor or partners who are part of this chain, because Lemon Tree, they are focused on bottles and drinks and food and beverage containers, so to say, voilà. And then they do partnership with other specialists that are on different other waste streams, and all this is somehow compiled in this digital tool, so quite powerful. And then in terms of partnership also, because competition has grown, because public funding has become scarcer, etc. There has been a rise in partnerships between social enterprises, and also between social enterprises and mainstream enterprises. And so I put this example of Logins because I find it quite interesting. It's a social joint venture between XPO, which is one of the big players in logistics in Europe and in the world, actually, in the top 10 players, and Ares, which is in France a renowned social enterprise, specialized in work integration. So they work with people facing barriers to work because of life accident, problem of education, long-term unemployment, etc., and people with disabilities facing also barriers to work. And so with for instance, XPO, they developed this joint venture, which is called Logins. And then I realized I don't have the numbers on the slide, but they've been quite successful, actually. They've been quite successful, and altogether, Ares developed 3 different joint ventures. One with Vinci, which is a construction corporate, XPO, and also with Accenture on more IT services. And altogether, those 3 social joint ventures, they contribute to 10 million euro turnover to Ares. So it's quite substantial. And for instance, the one that has been developed with Vinci, which is more on construction work, it employs over 200 employees and has a 5 years lifespan. So it's it can be quite powerful, and it's really like on the bright side of this, you can see that like partners are bringing in the game their strength. So one with the know-how in a specific sector, and also the firepower of a huge group, and Ares comes in with all his know-how in social inclusion, and in such a venture, Ares would have 51% of the shares, and the other and the mainstream actor would have 49. And then and what is more is that all the return or the benefits by contract are remaining within the joint venture, so really kind of locked in. Voilà. So that was an example that I was willing to share. I don't know if there are any illustration on your side, or if it's these type of social joint venture are quite common in your jurisdiction. But
starting to be discussed, let's say.
Okay.
Because there is a in our country there is a legal restriction, not a restriction, is an handicap. There's not yet a legal definition what is a social enterprise.
Okay. And therefore,
so that is why it is not that easy to involve potential investors as so you have to be very creative, as there is no legal definition. Okay, there is almost a open sheet or blank sheet of paper where you can design a lot of things, but that has to do what you mentioned about this case, that the profits have to, in this case of in France, remains inside the joint venture, is not meaning that there is not dividends to be given to the investors. That is quite peculiar. It's quite relevant, I think, because so far as we have no legal definition of what is a social enterprise, we don't know what will be the profit, the tax, the income tax system if we have to create a social enterprise as such. Do we have to pay a normal corporate tax, okay, or not? How would we then share with investors the equity capital? And then, of course, what is the expected return if we cannot know, we don't know what is the taxation on the first hand, and we don't know exactly how we should prove that if we are a social enterprise, then we should have a commitment that the profits should be reinvested or should be always connected with the mission of the entity. So we have still a long list of items to be discussed. It is said that in our country, because of the social, how do you call it? The social economy action plan, I think that's the word, that the European Commission has launched and is now approved. Okay, there is now a big incentive for at last these legal black holes disappear. Okay, that it make it clear exactly what are we talking about. Is it a legal status? Is it a sort of label that all kinds of entities can apply to? I want to, like a private partnership can apply to be labelized as a social enterprise. Can an NGO claim to be social enterprise? So there's a lot of still on the table to be clarified before we really can attract at a relevant level, potential investors to this field. One interesting thing that has been tested, let's say, at the moment is what they call revenue share agreement, sharing agreement. That Fondation AGAs, the insurance group, which comes from Belgium, I think, they have a foundation here in the country, and they are very keen on going, testing all these possibilities. And they found, because of these black holes on the legal system and on the tax system as well, that the best solution could be, a revenue sharing agreement. Okay, I am investor. I put the money I put the money up front to build the business or to scale up the business. Okay, but then you share with me, investor, X% of the annual income. Okay, like if you say, is the way it was found to pay back the investment or the profit is like a sort of royalty, X% of the total revenue of the social enterprise, okay, it will go to the private investor, because in fact, the private investor was the only one who was in a position to put upfront, the relevant amount of money necessary to start the whole venture. So again, creativity is necessary when you don't have, fixed rules. And in some cases, not having fixed rules is also good enough because it gives you more room to test different ideas.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, this social joint venture in France, they are not defined by any kind of law, etc. It was just the way, for instance, Ares, because they were the really front runner in this type of partnership. But now they are, at least, I mean, they themselves developed 3, but a huge group such as Vitamin T also developed a few. I think there are 15, 20 such social joint venture in France, for instance. I will put in maybe in the notes a link to a kind of a toolbox on this, but it's all in French. But I mean, just if you're interested in the topic, Raphael, to see, I mean, in more detail how it looks like and the type of and I mean and how it was all developed. And bref, something, of course, that has been extensively talked about over the last 10 years was also the growth in the crowd of social finance provider and impact investors. So on the right-hand side of this slide, it's a map of the ecosystem of social finance / impact investor in France. This dates back in 2022. In 2024, it is more populated. I mean, every year, it is done every year, and every year there are newcomers, and nobody disappears. So it's interesting in terms of potential or potential funding to tap into for social enterprises. And you can at a more European level, because it's we're in here in a European network. You might take a look also at the last Impact Europe mapping study, which has been published. I mean, it has been officially launched yesterday at the Impact Day, Impact Conference in Bilbao. You might want to take a look at this, and it will give you a sense of how fast this has grown, although it's still niche. I mean, it's still more financial resources. Voilà, so that would be for the trend at the moment, and it's not only for social enterprises. Of course, financial resources are more expensive, which puts high pressure on financing structure of any kind of enterprise, but all the more so on social enterprises, because typically for instance, when we talk about bank loans, the access can be a little more complicated than more regular mainstream enterprises, because of these hybrid resources type of structure that is sometimes looked at a little bit with a little bit of suspicion. Although this again has changed a lot over the last 10 years. There are really there have been programs that have been developed by banking networks really to also raise awareness among the employee and to better assess those type of models. Voilà. And maybe also there could be a risk of funding scarcity for models that are less scalable, because when we talk about this growing crowd of impact investors, it might be that mostly because we talk about VC model, and there is a need to also satisfy the LP's expectations, that they might select certain types of very highly scalable social enterprises, on the contrary to other that would be more cost structure heavy, less scalable, but all the more so impactful in terms of social challenges they are tackling. So typically for social housing, it's which is a priori not very highly scalable. that could be an example of type of social enterprise or type of business model that would have difficulties to access to funding, or that would not benefit from this growing crowd of impact investors. And there are other examples that I did not mention here, but I'm sure you can think of a few. This is the third part, and I need to go then fast. So maybe just to say that something that also has changed is that there has been a strong growth also in the crowd of social enterprises, and they are really, I mean, better documented, and so I mentioned again this European Social Enterprise Monitor that gives you a sense of the numbers of the numbers. It comes from the study from the European Commission. Then you have something about also the different types of legal form, and on the left hand side you have the numbers, the proportion of social enterprises that have been created in the last, within the last 20 years. So it gives you, so almost 83% of the social enterprises that are in this survey were not there 20 years ago. So it gives you a sense of kind of development, at least of the sector, depending on how many disappeared in between. So bref, so this growth of social enterprises, I cannot speak about it very solidly, but at least it's documented now and quite strongly. And I also mentioned this World Economic Forum global survey on the state of social enterprise, which has been published in 2024, so this year. And so they estimate the number of social enterprises across the planet at 9.79 million. So 3% of companies globally. Voilà, so that was the fact that social enterprises tangent a critical mass, so to say. There is this growing awareness from the European Commission, so Social Business Initiative, now Social Economy Action Plan that you mentioned, Raphael, which is really willing to support the growth of social and solidarity economy, and social enterprise are a big actor in this aspect. And also at a global level, United Nations that have passed a resolution in 2023 on the recognition of social and solidarity economy. So there is kind of a momentum, supporting momentum for the development of these organizations, which, voila, so these are different supportive policies that can also impact positively the business model of social enterprises, in the sense that they get better access to funding, be they private or public, or they get better access to state aid, depending on the state aid rule that might be evolving, and better recognition that also can grant them a better access to market, and so growing revenue streams. Also, this is a two-sided coin, because it comes also with the relationship that might change and evolve over time. So I mentioned the rise of outcome-based contract, the fact that we move from more, generally speaking, more like a grant policy to more public procurement type of relationship with social enterprises, meaning that social enterprises in that type of schemes would be more managers of services of general interest, so to say. So maybe social innovation there doesn't have that much room for maneuver. It's also the fact that, okay, there is growing recognition, but then there is also growing competition, also with the mainstream for-profit sector. But that goes along hybridization and cooperation. So maybe it's a kind of a balance eventually. And there is this funding scarcity that leads to this increasing competition also between non-profit organizations, for instance. That does not help. Voilà. So just to mention the evolution of the relationship with the public sector, barriers that are persisting. So this is for the global level, the World Economic Forum survey, and you have, it's not is not willing to. These are the typical barriers that are mentioned in this European Social Enterprise Monitor survey. And I already mentioned them quite a few times. Financial support is something that is quite hampering the development of social enterprises and fragilizing their business model, as well as access to market. So really procurement regulation that would be more supportive. Well, this is something that I won't have time to touch upon. Sadly, the idea was to mention also the overall transition that that Europe is navigating, and the fact that social economy has been, and social enterprise being part of this, has been identified as one of the key player within the recovery of Europe and a pathway to more sustainability. And so, because there are two different aspects in this. So first, the fact that social economy counts a lot of pioneer in these areas of environment and digital transition. So really pioneers in renewable energy, waste management, sustainable transports, etc. And also the part of this sector needs a lot of support when they are not native player in environmental or digital activities to transition as well towards more a less strong environmental footprint and a more digitalized way of working. So this comes from a workshop report on transition pathway on proximity social economy as part of a social economy action plan. Quite interesting, and really that touch upon the challenges that are faced by social enterprises in this digital and green transition that I will not detail because we are running after time, and the opportunities that are also embedded in this transition. Just a few examples, maybe. Je sais pas, Johanna, do I still have 1 minute? I don't see.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this would be typically
already two questions, so it's
okay. Oui, so FEV is an agricultural land ownership company that has been launched in 2019, and as you see, they have already raised more than 26 million euros. And what for? What they do is that they want to fight against the decline of small and medium-sized farm in France, where there are also yearly several thousand farmers that are not being replaced, and they want also to support the transition towards organic farming, or the transition of land to organic farming. And so they buy land and they rent it to farmers, but they eventually give them the option of buying this out after a certain period of time, so to become themselves owners. And why is this example interesting? It's because the founder team, they are really like a digital natives, agricultural engineer, but also data scientists. And they developed very efficient digital tools, proprietary digital tools that enables them to manage the whole activity from the investment management part to the captation of land part and the relationship with the owner very, very efficiently. And hence the very big success that they celebrate in terms of number of farms and how many hectares have been converted into so agroecology. So we say agroecology probably in English. And this would be another example of how social enterprise business model that are supporting also climate transition and green transition. This is Doremi. So what they do is that they developed a method that is quite innovative, that brings together various craftsmen on the same site, on the same renovation site, to do all the work at once. And then they do this, and at the same time, they take care of the chase after financial aids. Meaning that because what they say is that stage renovation, this is not effective in achieving energy performance. And in the long run, it can be more expensive. So usually it's not being done because of the cost. So what they do is that they look for the financial aid as much as possible. And they see to it that the economy of energy is really substantial. So here I mentioned one example. So you go from 2,500 euro per year to 500 euro per year. So it's quite a gap, quite a stretch. And they see to it in their action that they serve at least 45% of their beneficiaries, of their customers. They are struck by energy poverty, so they are more vulnerable households. And so these are the type of models that I can mention in this topic of digital and green transition. And then the last, but then it's too late. Yeah, I wanted to touch upon this topic of inclusive social entrepreneurship. Which is more a question of governance than business model, although it can also have an influence on specific block of economics. So the type of channels that you mobilize, the way you define your key stakeholders, and also maybe the resources stream and cost structure. Voilà, so it was just to mention this very interesting article by the Stanford Social Innovation Review on which is called In Search of Inclusive Social Entrepreneurship. And the author there, he acknowledges the rise of social entrepreneurship and says that the wave of new social entrepreneurs have been really willing to tackle social problem in an entrepreneurial way. But he says that it's a Brazilian article that actually the majority of social entrepreneurs, they are male, affluent, and coming from very specific, kind of privileged part of the population, and it might be that they are addressing and tackling social challenges in a poor way, or at the very least in an improvable way, so to say. So it calls for the rise also of social entrepreneurs that would come more from these potential beneficiary crowd, so to say, and it identifies a few barriers to these. Why isn't it so already today? And it says that it comes from a lack of financial assets, human, psychological, and social assets. And he mentions a few ways to overcome this, and also all the advantage that there would be in developing and supporting more of social entrepreneurs coming from the communities that are struggling with a given social challenge. So that would be an interesting perspective for a social enterprise in the coming years. And that was one example of such a social enterprise that is called Gribouillis, and that has so it's a nannies network that does training and advocacy for the job of a nanny, and it has been founded by Aminata Diouf. So she was herself a nanny. She was a single parent. She wanted to improve her profession, and she created this with her daughter, which is she's a doctor in chemical engineering. So really nothing to do with childcare, and it's being developed really on her own experience, based on her own network, and it has quite it has quite grown, and is quite successful in the recognition of such an essential profession in France. And I could develop the business model, but maybe I will leave it to you to look for more information on Gribouillis. And I'm sure you would have had a thousand of examples to share of such examples. But maybe we leave. No, there is remaining time for questions, or not at all.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So there is one question from Ellie. If you can give us the name of the report you are mentioning.
I think
if you can put it in the chat. And I have a question. If you consider that giving facilities to social enterprises is an advantage or not, because in my view, they are kind of subject to, they can be vulnerable to legislational changes, for example, in terms of losing the facilities. And if they rely on such facilities, they might not be as competitive as, let's say, in a market where there are no such facilities.
And you think of specific facilities, just
yeah, for example, if a social enterprise can receive financial deductions for employees, for example, and if they lose those facilities,
bien sûr.
they might be vulnerable to actually having to close such the social enterprise just because they were, let's say, relying on such facilities.
Oui.
Somehow I'm thinking that a more rewarding or acting on a competitive market, but having access to additional funding could be much, let's say, sustainable rather than starting from facilities, so to speak.
Oh, you mean a reduced cost or like advantages coming from your status, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Again, it really depends on how much disadvantage weighs. It's really something that, I mean, it cannot be the cornerstone of your business model in any case, because you're putting yourself too much at risk. But yeah, tax break, you know, they are not there forever. So that's the same. You need to like it should more be a plus.
Yeah.
A plus, not nice to have or to serve to your investor, but not more a plus of really piling up a little bit of equity to weather the storm later on, and engage again, like we said with Raphael, engage your stakeholders depending on the type of facility that we are talking about.
I'm saying this because in Romania, for example, for many years, there were facilities for social enterprises, and most of them were started by non-profits.
Yeah.
And most of the non-profits didn't have a business model in their head. So, and they would rely mostly on the fact that their competitive advantage are the fact that they could offer these lower prices, for example, due to the facilities they were having access to. And once these facilities left, they realized that actually they are not competitive on the market.
Yeah. And this was specific activities or all kind of activities, or?
They're mostly related to, I mean, it depends, so to speak, but the facilities were around employing people from vulnerable communities. And I think the risk was actually that since these facilities existed, the nonprofits didn't really invest in bringing these people to a point where they could be employable on the regular market, so to speak. And once they left, these people ended up being unemployed because for them it wasn't really an alternative to go to, you know, to a more competitive market.
But so it means that even in terms of social impact, it was not that fruitful, if I understand.
Yes, I would say so. Some of them survived, and because they had a good business model and they really served like relevant needs of the market. But many of them were just a way to employ people that were indeed difficult to employ due to, let's say, health issues or whatever social context they were in, and they were basically surviving on these facilities. And then once they were gone, the whole, I mean, a big part of these social enterprises were actually realized how vulnerable they were. I mean, the intentions were not bad because they obviously offered employment to people that are hard to employ and so on. But since the business model was not there, they realized only after they found themselves in the situation of not having access to facilities that they're not competitive.
Yeah. Again, I would say it's a question of proportion and how much this complement weighs in your product distribution. This is supposed to compensate increased cost structure, not to make for the business model. So it's also a question of how much diversified are your revenue streams, which really is supposed to strengthen your business model, and what is the recurring aspect of part of these revenues.
I see that Rafael also has a question, and then Ellie. Rafael, if you want to ask. If not, we can go to Ellie. Her question is, what could be an approach to increase diversity-oriented representation of social inclusive entrepreneurs?
To grow this type of enterprises, right? Alors, I'm absolutely not a specialist. I can only quote what I saw in this article. It was mostly develop. The idea was mostly to develop to design really astute training and coaching, non-financial support program to support. I mean to inspire and to support social entrepreneurs coming from these communities. Also he was citing the importance of role models as well, to raise awareness and again to bring inspiration. But yes, it was mostly human support and targeted and co-designed, of course, because otherwise it's completely missing the point. And I'm sure there are, and plus this financial support that is apparently essential. The one number that I found completely striking was that I think entrepreneurs coming from those communities, he was not, I mean, I cannot define exactly the frame, but it was something like 1 to 37 times the difference between capital available for the creation of an enterprise from people coming from a lower income community to those social entrepreneurs that were more affluent. So of course you don't start with exactly the same assets, and you are less resilient, because that's also a question of time, and to have sufficient time also to start and grow. So you need capital at the beginning in any case. Voilà. I'm not sure it completely answered the question, but
Ellie completed added to the question that she's referring to social entrepreneurs that come from communities that the social enterprise addresses.
Oui, c'est ça. Yeah. That was what I understood. Yes.
Okay.
What I meant to mention was, I think, is on the same line that Joanna was commenting. Also in our country, work integration social enterprises are well, of course, they are a specific case of social enterprises handling with specific handicapped people or people with some sort of disabilities, of low employability skills. But I think that case is much more, Clementine, the case of not being able to reach a minimum income level that would pay the costs, because we cannot expect that this workforce would be so productive, let's say, so efficient, so productive. So efficiency, productivity rates, cannot be expected to be at the same level of a normal enterprise in the market. In the case of Casa Sul, one of our members has a big farm which has been integrated on biological agriculture. As a matter of fact, both York and Wolfgang have visited that farm when they came to Azores last July, and they could see that the people working there, some people were deaf, some have some stigma of autism, I think that's the word, so they have specific health or mental conditions. So we cannot expect that they could, work on a tomato crop, on a rose garden, and sort of vegetables production at the same speed at a normal worker could do. So the challenge for this work integration social enterprise is much more not the cost, is much more the income. You cannot have the same level of production. You cannot reach the same level of turnover to balance the cost. So that's why on our legal system, these work integration social enterprises are designed to be within the big umbrella of a non-profit entity, which in fact is responsible to covering this deficit, this loss between costs and income. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very true, very true. And this is where also these subsidies are meant for. It's really either that or also compensate part of the management of the support that has also to be on site in a more numerous way than would be on a normal chain. Yeah, definitely. Are there any other questions?
Ellie was asking if you can help us with a link to the FEV website. Yes, if you a link to
yes,
to site. You can do it now, or we can send it afterwards as when we send the whole package.
Maybe yes, maybe because no, I don't, and I'm and I'm struggling a little bit with the two screens, etc. So,
but I think it's okay
if sure. So I noted
you can integrate it in the presentation. You can integrate it in the presentation, and we can send it further.
Later.
If that's okay with you, Ellie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super.
Thank you. If you have any other questions.
I'm happy for today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this moment, this opportunity, for this session, for today's sessions, and all the best to you all. See you soon, for sure.
Yeah, see you soon, hopefully.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for making time and for participating and for the questions. And see you soon.
Yes,
thank you very much, Clementine.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.